Welcome back to the Krueger and Krueger podcast, where we talk about baseball and softball, life, and everything in between. My name is Tony Krueger, and I'm with my dad, Corey Krueger. This podcast is sponsored by Network Health. Network Health Medicare Advantage plans offer great benefits and an expansive coverage network that keeps you secure at home and free to venture. So this is episode 4. The topic today is how to become a great hitter. So we're going to be talking about mechanics, mindset, and a bunch of other things too. So the first question is, what are some commonalities that all great hitters have? So when you think about Ted Williams, Babe Ruth, or modern guys like Trout or Judge.
Rachel Garcia.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
So what are the commonalities that you see?
A couple of things. I would say number one is hand-eye coordination, the ability to, to see the ball well, to recognize pitches, where they are in the zone. That's all of those hitters that you just described, or some of the softball players I was mentioning there. That's number one. Number two, athleticism. Even someone like Tony Gwynn, who might not look like the greatest athlete, you have to remember that's a basketball player who actually started Division I basketball. So these are great athletes that have great hand-eye coordination.
Mm-hmm. I would also add too, in the mental side of it, confidence. So we talked about this on the last episode, but just having that competitive nature and just feeling like you can win in any scenario. Sometimes it gets borders on the line of delusion, where you feel like you can win anything, but that's sort of the mentality you have to have when you hit. So we're going to get into mechanics. So we have kind of a system at the school, and we really focus on bat path. So what that means is making sure the barrel of the bat is in the way of the ball for a really, really long time. To get the barrel in the way of the ball early so that we can make good contact when we're a little bit later on pitches and drive the ball the opposite way, we have to start with the hips. So we want our hips to rotate first. You want to talk a little bit about that and how you apply that in your lessons?
Yeah, our biggest thing is we always say try to get to the ball quickly, but stay in the strike zone for a long time. At least that's my thought process. I know you talk a little bit about that too. But yeah, firing the hips is crucial because it starts athletically. It starts the mechanics of how we're going to swing. Remember, the bat is going to flex. It's going to snap into the strike zone. The more hip power that you start with, more hip drive you start with, the harder you're going to hit the ball.
Yeah, and with that too, so making sure that your load is good. So if you don't create the necessary amount of tension in your core before you turn your hips, it's not really going to work. So that's why the load is very important. And so we want to see our hands in our front side, so our front leg. When we load, we want those two things to kind of come apart. So as you make your forward move, as you start to step towards the pitcher with your front side, you want those hands to pull back. And that's going to kind of create this like quote unquote stretching effect in your core. So now when we turn our hips and we actually begin to rotate our lower half, there's no slack. And so the barrel will just get pulled along with. That's how you can create effortless power, but it's also how you can turn the barrel. Because if you try this at home, if you just stretch your hands and your front side out, so you step forward, hands back, now when you turn your hips, you'll notice your hands will naturally just turn behind you like this, kind of creating like a Nike sign type of motion. So if you had like a paintbrush on the end of your bat, you'd be painting the Nike sign. And that gets your bat in the way of the ball. So we don't want to go under, like we don't want to get loopy, but we also don't want to go straight down either. We want to match the plane of the pitch. And so for baseball and softball, it's a little bit different because baseball is coming a little bit more at a downward angle because the ball's released, overhand, and also there's a mound. Softball, sometimes it can even be flatter, just like a little bit upward too. So are there any differences in how you teach bat path with softball and baseball players?
For me, not really. Not at all. Because really it's the key to getting to the ball quickly and staying in the strike zone for a long time. And so with that, we're really just trying to stay behind the ball, stay inside of it as you approach.
So you want your hitters to be just kind of flat, like right through?
Pretty much. Because here's the thing. Naturally, your hands, they can't stay in that path forever. So you will rise as you come through, and you will get to your shoulder. I think a big mistake that a lot of people find is that rather than stay in the strike zone going forward, though, they'll come out super quick and change the direction of the bat. Yeah. And as everyone knows, energy becomes energy, right? So the more energy we can send through the ball, the more energy is going into the ball's travel path. So That's kind of how I look at it.
That's something I really struggled with in my career is like, I was always in the way of the ball early, but at the end of my swing, it was really tough to keep my barrel in the way of it. And we call that extension. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the end part of the swing. When you're early on it and you're hitting the ball out in front of you, how long can you keep your barrel going through the ball? Because that really gives you a ton of adjustability. And adjustability just means your ability to change what you're doing based on what the pitcher does. So if I get a changeup, in my career, I got a ton of changeups. So if I'm early, if I'm fooled on a changeup with 2 strikes, I need to have my bat path good enough where I can extend and still get a base hit somewhere. So how do you teach extension?
Well, I mean, I think the first way is to think about it. Give a story maybe or some kind of like other example. So if you think about someone who shoots pool, for example, that might not be like what everyone can understand, but everyone's seen it or they've at least watched someone play if they haven't played themselves. How many times when you break, and this happens to me a lot, I'm not very good at pool, but I had brothers who were very good at it. And when they would shoot, you'd watch them shoot and finish all the way through the shot. And when I would shoot, I would always be like this and come out right away. And the ball would just kind of go kittywampus that way, And I think there's a lot of hitters like that. So I always say, think about that. You want the shot when you break to be forward and through. And so the other thing we always like to say is, okay, think about hitting 10, 20, 30 balls, not just the one you made contact on, but keep your barrel going through 30 more balls that potentially you could drive. Right. You can think about that when you do tee shots, right? So that's the other way to think about it. So either a story or an example like that would help people think a little bit more about, hitting not just one, but many balls going forward. So as if there were 10, 20 balls lined up in a row, just kind of like do, going all the way through.
So that they can visualize it, that's really good. And I agree. I think most kids, that's probably the biggest problem is at the end of the swing, kids come out of the strike zone too early. So we've talked about how to get in the strike zone early in the beginning of your swing. So we create that stretch, turn the hips. And then at the end, we got the extension, but we've only talked about how kids come up out of the strike zone. There's another way that you see a lot too. So coming around the ball. So you get to the ball pretty well, but then your bat goes across your body and around. It's kind of like if you've ever heard the term rolling over, it's kind of the same thing, or casting. Yeah. It's kind of the same idea. So how do we get around that? You talked about staying inside the ball. Yeah. What are some visuals that we can give kids to help with that?
So one of the things that we talk about a lot is kind of how the hands act as like brother and sister or two sisters, two brothers that don't get along. They've got to get along. So if my lead hand, my bottom hand is not very aggressive and my top hand is super aggressive, it's going to do several things. One, it's going to come out early. Yeah. It's going to go around, or maybe it's going to spin, right? So those are all problems. Either I'm rolling over, I'm going around, I'm coming out. So what has to happen is we have to make sure that we have hands over, like we always like to say, hands over the barrel the whole way through. And if that's happening, we can drive the ball out. And so maybe even like having someone put a ball in their hand, their top hand, and try to like imagine if they were trying to hit, how would they keep that ball in the hand without turning it or flipping it or, Right. I know a lot of people like to use the Frisbee drill. That's too hard though. I mean, I'm a guy who can throw a Frisbee pretty well, and I have tried to do that drill, and I can't do that and really, like assimilate a swing.
Yeah.
I can put something in my hand like a ball or, a piece of something and just practice not turning it or flipping it.
Yeah.
That's a great way to do it. The second way, Tony, that we do a lot at the school is we use dowels, sticks.
Yeah.
Longer sticks force you to stay in the strike zone longer. You can't come up and out as quickly or around because it's just not physically as efficient. And plus, it's just not the physics of it just don't allow for that to happen.
Right. Because it's so long. So just finding a dowel or like the end of a rake or shovel or something, it's really, really helpful. I think that's probably one of the best drills that we have. You talked about a couple things I want to touch on that were really, really interesting. So the bottom hand dominance thing, an interesting stat is that the majority of Hall of Fame baseball players have bottom hand dominance. So let's say if you're a left-handed hitter, you're right-handed, so your bottom hand is stronger. So that's really interesting, because, back in the day, they used to just say, okay, this guy's really good. He just has God-given talent, which is somewhat true, but there is some like science to that. There is some like mechanics to that. If your bottom hand is dominant, it allows you to stay through the ball a lot longer. It's just as simple as that. So, how can we train that if we're not bottom hand dominant? We can do bottom hand swings. We can work on, kind of rewiring our brain. I always recommend like hitting on the opposite side, throwing with the opposite hand, just trying to do things with your weaker hand to strengthen it, especially like most people are right-handed hitters and they're right-handed. So that means your left hand is weaker. That means your bottom hand is weaker. And so with those kind of hitters, we see a lot of kids go around the ball and roll over. It's just as simple as that. So they need to do a lot of bottom hand swings. They need to, in the weight room, they need to make sure they're emphasizing getting their left hand just as strong as their right hand. So maybe that looks like every set that you do of a single arm exercise, you do the left hand first. And you focus on it just a little bit more intensely, because, usually when you lift the first limb that you do first, you focus on it a little bit more. Yeah. So that's something that would be really good. And then, so kind of going off that same vein though, too, who are some hitters that you can think of that are like that, with really, the bottom hand dominance?
Well, so like, okay. So like, I just think of like, growing up around here too, like Matt Erickson would be a great example of that. He's a right-handed thrower who hit left-handed. And I don't really know of anybody who didn't have better hands than him growing up.
Right.
He just stayed inside the ball really nicely and really got to the ball really well. And so I think there's a lot of people like that, if you're very true what you said, and you think about it, there are so many kids who are right-handed. They throw right-handed, they hit right-handed. And so their top hand is always going to be a little stronger. So just a simple reminder that, hey, we're not going to spin this hand. We're not going to lift this hand. We're going to keep it more in the strike zone. And whether that's by thinking about hitting 20 balls or by using a stick or whatever you're doing, whatever drill you're going to work on to do that, it's going to make you a better hitter.
Yeah. The other one I like is just hitting something that's immovable. So like a tire or anything like a tire,
a dummy or something like that.
Yeah. Or even like a tree, I guess. Yeah. But anything like that is really, really good. You talked about having the hands above the barrel. Let's talk about that a little bit more too, because I think that is absolutely crucial for having good bat path, like we talked about. If your hands are even with the barrel, you're going to go around the ball for sure. Like that's just physically, you're going to go across your body way too early and get out of the strike zone early. So when we're hitting, just kind of demonstrating it, we want the bat to be going lower than our hands. Another thing that's going to help with that though is posture, right? Like if I'm straight up and down, it's really easy for my hands to be even with my bat. But if I kind of get my head and chest over the plate and kind of get that downward posture over the plate, which you see almost every good hitter do, your hands will be above the barrel a lot easier, right? So are there any drills or ways that you think about that to teach kids that?
Well, I think, sometimes there's not a great drill for something, but I just think just like being very conscious of it. One thing that I've always done too is like with a resistance cord. Like if you can work a resistance cord in front of you and you're working on one-handed effort, it's impossible to do that without good posture. Because what's going to happen if I'm unathletic and I'm standing up or I'm not in great, my feet are not in good position, I'm not going to be able to get my hands to that. So that's a good drill for that.
Right. The other part too is if your core is just straight up and down when you're hitting, that's just not an athletic position, right? Like if you think about playing basketball, guarding somebody in basketball, or you're about to go for a jump to get a rebound, you're going to have your chest over your toes. Your chest is going to be angled slightly, diagonal, right? If you're guarding someone in football, you're a defensive back, you're not going to be straight up and down. You're going to get beat immediately, right? Or if you're going for a block, same thing. You're not going to be straight up and down. And we could just have infinite examples of that in sports. So that's the other part too, is your balance is going to be so much better. And balance is really important because if we lose balance, particularly with our legs, our bat's going to come out of the strike zone too. There's a such thing as over rotating. Like we talked about turning the hips. If you turn the hips too much, you're going to go around the ball, right? So if we're in a balanced stance throughout our swing and we can hold our legs and be really strong, I always talk about let your legs become a brick wall when you make contact with the ball, because that allows your legs to stop and it allows the rest of the body to whip through. And that's something that's really helpful. So if we have good posture where our chest is down and we're athletic, kind of like in that basketball guarding stance, now it's so much easier to turn your legs into a brick wall. It's so much easier to not over rotate. So much easier to keep your barrel going right through the ball. So that's kind of what we really want to focus on with the balance aspect of it. Now, is balance easy? No, because it requires a ton of core strength, right? We're trying to swing a bat as fast as we can and keep our balance during that. So you need core strength, hip strength. You need to just generally have a lot of balance, which is a skill. Like you have to train that, right? So what are some ways that we can get good at that? I remember when I was a kid, you had me do like lateral jumps. So I'd like jump on one leg back and forth. I think personally that was the most helpful drill I ever did. We have some examples of that on our YouTube page, or this YouTube page, just exercises, but it's just jumping from, let's say, your right leg to your left leg and then bouncing for a second and then just going back and forth. Is there any other drills?
Well, I think in our last, segment, we talked a little bit about like, having the it factor or the X factor. I think some, kids grow up, and let's just be honest here, in our world today, kids aren't in the backyard playing tag or kick the can or, kickball like we used to every single day when I was very young. Nowadays, you've got the opportunity for screen time and all this different kind of stuff. So, you've got kids doing more TikToks than explosion trainings, which is why you don't see as many great hitters. I think playing other sports, you think about the game of tennis or racquetball and stuff like that, you were literally stopping and starting and being explosive constantly. It comes from a balanced position, an explosive position, a loaded position. The same thing happens in basketball, getting around a pick or doing a jump shot, or going for a rebound, all of these different things, volleyball too, whatever sport it is. I think any other sport's going to help you do that, right? But specifically with hitting, if we do not have, there's sometimes in our hitting lessons where we have to take 5, 10, 15 minutes and just kind of teach athleticism, because what we're trying to train with hitting is so dynamic and it's so difficult that if someone just doesn't have it or the X factor, we have to stop and make sure they've got it. So, one of the things that we talk about a lot is having your feet grounded. If your feet are grounded, you're going to be, athletic. That usually means nose over your toes, chest over your toes, hands over your toes, athletic position. So, so you can practice that too. Like another thing is box jumps. You mentioned that a little bit. Basically jumping up and down. You know what I mean? Coming to a balanced position.
And landing, right?
Yeah. That's totally huge.
Yep.
So I think that's a crucial thing. I think anything that's going to involve two-legged landing, jumping, explosiveness is huge.
Yeah. So there you go, guys. Like there's more to it, and you can see how like there's so many moving parts in hitting. And that's why I think, places like us exist, is because it's so difficult to teach a kid to move in the right way and to think the right way to get them to move the right way. And every kid's different too, right? And there are patterns. Like you do enough lessons, eventually you start to see certain patterns, but it's a really difficult thing. And so that's kind of the goal of this podcast, though, just to kind of illuminate that, not necessarily just give you guys the end all be all, this is how you hit, because there really isn't a perfect way, because every kid has different deficiencies and muscle imbalances and tendencies and thought processes and stuff like that. So everyone's different. It's just, it's really important to understand how many moving parts there are to this and how complicated it is. And we don't, in that same light, though, we don't ever want to allow kids to think of it that way. We want to keep it as simple as possible, right? Because like we just said, it's already so complicated. It's our job as coaches to think about that. And we want to package those ideas in the most simple, basic way that a hitter can understand, so that they can succeed. So that's kind of the goal of what we do.
Well, if you think about it, Tony, you're asking someone, okay, in less than half of a second to decide what the pitch is, where it is, and what they're going to do with it.
Right.
We really need to dumb it down to as simple as see ball, hit ball. You know what I mean?
A lot of times it's very true.
Yeah. So if you can eliminate all those issues with the athleticism, eye position, hand position, balance posture, and coordinate posture, all that stuff, by developing athleticism, well, guess what? You're probably going to make a better hitter, and it's going to be more confident, more comfortable for the hitter, and so they're going to be better that way.
Right, 100%. Now that's kind of the mechanics part of it, and like I said, there is more to it, and different hitters deal with different issues, and it's really, really interesting to me because some kids come in, they're like 6'4", they have a lot different things that they're dealing with, whereas if I have a young kid come in at like 4'6", it's like everything's different. Like the posture that the taller kid's going to need is a lot different than the shorter kid, and there's the extension of the shorter kid is going to be a lot different than the taller kid, right? So it's really interesting to see the differences there. The other aspects of hitting are going to be like kind of the intangible parts and stuff that are really going to help you there. So like nutrition, sleep, stress management, and we're not going to talk about that stuff too much today. That might be a whole new podcast, I think. But I think with the nutrition part, the biggest thing I see with kids is like, especially at the high school level, they just are not big enough to do what they need to do yet. And so if you want any advice for that, it's not necessarily to have this certain diet or whatever, because everything works differently for different people. Everyone has different nutrient deficiencies, whatever, right? But it is just eat more, especially, in high school. To compete at the college level, you're competing against, you're going into a level where there's people who are 23 years old, in baseball, like the average D1 baseball player is about 6'1", 200 plus pounds, right? So you need to be physical enough and have that physicality to compete with that. And so you need to get in the weight room, you need to eat, you need to sleep, so just eat more generally, right? Like a good rule of thumb is try to get around like a pound for every pound of body weight that you have, try to get a gram of protein in for that. So if I'm a 200-pound kid, I need 200 grams of protein. Now it's a little easier than you think, especially if you're, around here, like we got like a lot of dairy and, like beef, stuff like that. It's like, I don't know, it's easier around here to get that kind of diet in. It's really difficult if you're not eating a lot of protein to gain a ton of weight. Are there any rules of thumb, though, that you can think of that with the nutrition part?
Well, I just want to say this because I'm not sure who, all gets to see this and stuff, but, there's times when we'll be some of our kids will be at a tournament and I'll see them and they're double fisting a, sun drop slushy, an hour before a game. And I don't want to pick on them because quite honestly, I remember being, 12 years old, and one time I literally had Fun Dip for my dinner, which is a candy stick with powdered sugar. Okay. I wasn't much better, but I really didn't have anybody telling me. And back then we didn't really know how bad that could be for you, with ups and downs and highs and lows and sugars and stuff like that. So it's like, I think it's really important though, just, that there's so much information out there, and you parents, if you have questions on this, Tony and I have gone through a lot regarding that. Tony's really spent a lot of time on trying to get stronger and bigger and add weight and add power. But I'm also a diabetic. So for me, I have also learned 101 ways to eat healthier and be a healthier person. So I've gone through classes. I've done all the informational stuff too. So it's really important, I think, to have good nutrition, which is a totally different thing we can probably talk about another time.
For sure.
But that's definitely key to it too. And Tony's right. If you eat well the day before, you're going to probably have a better day the next day. If you sleep better the night before, you're probably going to hit better.
Yeah.
And this is facts. And I'm going to explain this to you in the best way that I can. I don't have a quantitative piece of information that says this is true, but I do have qualitative memories that tell me that there were times when Tony would be hitting and we would be testing exit velocity, and he'd have a hot one and another hot one, another hot one. And I'd say to him, hey, what did you eat yesterday? And I would just be interested because we were really looking at that. And then I said, what was your sleep like? And you're like, oh man, I went to bed last night like at 8 o'clock. And I just started thinking about that information. That's real though. I mean, because even though we didn't sit there and say, let's write down everything you ate the day before, every hour you logged sleeping. We did look at it and say, you're hitting the ball well today. How do you feel? Did you have a good day with other people? Did you have conflicts? Did you have issues? Those are real things. Those are real things.
100%.
So
Yeah, as someone who I would hit with my dad, you know, in my career, like every single day for like 10 years or whatever it was. So just having all that information, some of those patterns start to come up.
mhm.
And I totally noticed that my exit velocity, for example, would fluctuate 5 to 7 miles per hour based on all those factors: nutrition, stress, sleep. Like if those things were not all on point, my exit velocity was going to take a cut.
A tank.
So it's really interesting. Like, you know, it will affect your power at the plate. I think it'll affect your reaction time and decision making, your discipline, like chasing pitches, taking good pitches. So that's just something you want to focus on for young kids. Like I said, the general rule of thumb is eat more quality food, you know, like stuff that is not fully like just synthetically processed and just an abomination of nature, you know, like it's okay to like have candy or whatever and have fun and like don't ever like stress about it, but trying to eat a lot of real food, like stuff that grows in the ground or stuff that, you know, has a mom and dad. That's like a good rule. It's like try to eat a lot of real stuff and eat more of it so you can get big and strong. Sleep a ton so your reaction time and athleticism is on point. And lower your stress too, because it's really hard to make adaptations with your body and muscles and everything, and you know, mental performance to improve when you're just super stressed with social life or school or work or family life or whatever it is. So that's just stuff that we want to manage. All right, we're kind of getting to the end here. So we talked about, you said in the beginning how great hitters, all great hitters have great coordination. And you've talked a lot about how playing multiple sports, kind of just touching some grass, getting outside, staying off the screen and stuff, it's going to help you a ton. I will add, though, I do think there are some video games that will kind of help your hand-eye coordination a little bit and reaction time. But I don't think that, I don't want to say that and like kids go home and just start, you know, playing Fortnite constantly. But I think there is a place for that, you know, but it's not something that you should be spending 5 hours a day doing, hopefully.
I would say this, like if anyone ever played Galaga, it is like one of the hardest video games to ever play in the history of Atari, right? And when you were a kid, you used to play it all the time with me. The thing is, the things that you're shooting at in this, it's basically like a missile command type of game where you've got one spaceship shooting at all these different things that come at you in different directions. They come at you differently. The program changes. There's changeups, there's fastballs. It's insane. And it's like hitting. You
have to predict the movement of
and it's strangely like I'm terrible at like every video game that's ever been invented, but I'm actually decent at Galaga. And it's like I really like, but that's how I was thinking.
And there's that one level where you have to
really fast.
Like primes your nervous system to like fire really fast.
It does. And then all of a sudden it'll like have a change up and you just don't even notice that something just coming in on a slow dive bomb at you. And then the next thing, 2 seconds after that, it like takes a left turn and crushes you. Yeah. So it's like, it's all about like unpredictability, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're right. I think there's lots of stuff like that that's actually decent for you. You know, I just think anything like that is, you know, just too much is too much. But yeah,
for sure. And like even with TikTok or Instagram, there's some really like helpful stuff. Like we post on Instagram and YouTube, whatever. Like there's helpful things, there's educational things. So you can use all this new technology stuff for good. It's just like I said, try to touch some grass. Getting outside is really good for you too. It's going to lower your stress. Like just being in the sun, like getting in nature, like just playing sports, like you said. So maybe it's a good thing for kids, you know, or if there's parents watching this, just kind of going back to the kick the can days and stuff, and, you know, playing kickball or capture the flag or just pick up basketball or whatever it is, you know, or just maybe it's, you know, hitting the volleyball back and forth, like just doing athletic things are going to build coordination. One cool thing that my dad had me do when I was a kid was he would throw sunflower seeds at me to hit. So like I would have like a little dowel or a stick or just a wiffle ball bat, and he would throw sunflower seeds and I'd hit those. I think that's an excellent way to build coordination too, because obviously like if you can hit a sunflower seed, you can hit a baseball, right? It builds vision and all that kind of stuff. So one more thing I want to talk about. So I think one of the best ways to figure out what your swing should be. Because, okay, if you watch playoff baseball right now, you'll see, if you watch the Brewers, in their lineup, there's going to be 9 completely different swings. Like Yelich stands up, he's got a tall stance and a leg kick. That Durbin guy's a little more wide and low, right? So it's like everyone's different. How can you develop your own style, stance, and swing and finish, right? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would say is this: as a hitting instructor, and I'm sure there's lots of hitting instructors out there who feel this way. There's certain things that you've got to have that are super important. One, that we see the ball, right? That we've got good posture and good legs, right? And then our hands start and get to and finish in a good spot, right? We all agree on that, right? We're not going to disagree on that. How that happens, though, can be so different. And the key is, I would say any hitting coach is probably going to tell you, try not to like adjust too much. I have a couple players on my college team who've been kind of over adjusted, like they're always looking, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And it's like, no, you didn't do anything wrong. You just got out,
Right.
that's, you didn't fail. You just got out. So, just understand that when you're working on something, yeah, some things don't work and some things fail. So you do have to make changes and adjustments. But I feel like the forever adjuster, who's always working on something different and changing something all the time, I think that can get a little out of hand. So I just watch out for that. I think, I think for me, I was developing a lot up until about the age of 19. And then I kind of figured out this is what I'm going to do. And I didn't change after that. You know what I mean? Not everybody's like that. Some people still have issues and want to work on some things, but, just keep working on basics. Really try to develop confidence and comfortability and stay athletic. I think those are keys. And the how-to is really less important, I think. If that's, you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think like it puts you in a negative frame of mind when you're constantly trying to fix things. I think that's one mistake that I've made as a coach, and I've seen a lot of coaches make this mistake too, is you're just constantly talking about, you need to fix this, fix this, fix this. And it comes from a good place because you're trying to make them better, but you also need to reinforce the good things that they're doing, right? Like I had a lesson last night. I was talking to a guy about this, and he seemed like he was kind of getting down on himself a little bit. I'm like, listen, man, just because we're working on things doesn't mean that you're not doing a good job. Like, and I just went through it. I listed all the things that he was doing really well, right? Because that's what humans do, is we focus on the negative stuff. So it's really important to go back to what you do well and give yourself a little bit of that affirmation. Like, my finish is really good today. I'm hitting the ball hard. Even if you feel like your hips aren't working really well on that particular day, you have a bunch of other things that are going well too, and it kind of keeps you in the game. I was kind of talking more about like the stylistic part of it. Like, so for example, you've made a lot of changes in your career. You ended up having a really big open stance and kind of like played with the leg kick and stuff like that. I had an open stance too. Didn't really leg kick quite as much, but it's still, it is kind of the same kind of swing. But like I said though, like you watch like great hit, like you watch Hank Aaron hit a ball. It's like very simple. He's got a little bit of a tip. Whereas if you watch, I don't know, Javi Baez swing a bat, it's like completely different. They're both the same size, like 6 feet, 200 pounds. But Javi Baez is like crazy leg kick. There's a lot of movement. Like, do you get that kind of style by mimicking other hitters? Or, like how does that come about?
Yes and no. I think I want to say the player's name was Craig Stahoyak. He played for Creighton. They had just gotten, it was back in the early 90s, and I made it to the World Series, College World Series or something like that. And I saw him hit, and, they were talking about how he developed that style of hitting: open stance, higher leg kick. His timing was off. He was landing a little too soon, and he wasn't getting all of his hips to fire through the swing. So I was looking for more power at the time too, and I was working with a hitting coach about some things. And so I started to develop his style from seeing that, but then it became my own thing. So I think, we kind of steal a little bit, and that's great. You should always look to steal ideas and other things from other people. But once again, it just really comes down to comfortability and confidence. So yes, the style, that's going to come. Style points come. I'd rather see someone with some style than none, But then again, someone as styleless as Hank Aaron can, hold the home run record for for
Right.
decades.
Right.
So I don't know what's the best.
Yeah.
I just know like if you were looking for my athleticism, you might have to develop a little bit more athletic approach.
Right.
If you're looking to be a little bit more simple and just get to the ball because you hit the ball with some power and pop, you've got strong legs and strong hips, well, then maybe a little more simplistic approach would be better. But
Yeah, I guess my closing point on that is I like to think about it like just strategically. What do you do well? What do you not do well? And every sport's like that. Like when you played basketball, there were certain things I'm sure you did really well. Like you told me your left hand wasn't very good.
It's terrible.
So you're gonna but you're going to create your style and game based off of your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. Yeah,
and hitting's the same way.
I totally agree. I think in anything, okay, I don't care if you're, it's in life and business, in school, you look at your assets and your resources and you utilize those to make yourself the most efficient and the most successful.
Yeah.
Hitting is the same way,
Yeah, well, one thing that you did that was really smart when I was a kid was I used to have a closed stance. I used to hit normally, but then you had me like test which eye was dominant. Like he had me like make a circle and I had to like look with each eye at like an object. It's really easy to do. Like if you just find like a little object, like it could be I don't know, there's a switch or like a light switch. So I put my light switch in between my hands and then I close one eye and I open it. And if the light switch doesn't move at all, when you just close the eye that wasn't closing is your dominant eye. I know it sounds kind of complicated, but so that's what he had me do. And we figured out my left eye was way dominant. Like when I would close the left eye, the right eye was open the whole time. It would move a ton. And so my left eye was a lot stronger. And so I'm a left-handed hitter. So when you're hitting, your left eye is really far away from the pitcher. If you're not facing the pitcher, you're not going to be seeing the ball with your dominant eye. So that's when you had me open up my stance. And it completely changed everything. Like I started seeing the ball so much better, making better decisions. I stopped chasing like high pitches and stuff. It was a complete like 180 for me. So that's something that's really interesting. It's like take your physical attributes, your strengths and weaknesses, and develop your style and game based off of that. Make it a strategy thing. And that's what's cool about it is everyone is unique. Some lefties have a right eye dominant, so they don't have to do that. They can close off their stance, right? Like if you're really tall, a good chance you're not going to be very good on low pitches. So sometimes it's helpful to get a little lower in your stance or whatever, or get a little more lower posture when you're hitting the ball so you can reach those low pitches and kind of get around that thing you have. Or if you're a shorter player in softball, for example, you're going to struggle against the rise ball a lot because that ball is going to start as a strike and go way above your hands. So maybe you start a little taller, or maybe you have an approach where you try to just lay off everything high. You know what I'm saying? So that's like so interesting to me. But that's kind of my closing point on that. Do you have anything else?
I think that hitting is adjusting too, adjusting to speed, adjusting to movement and location. And, you might lose really badly the first at bat against someone, but learn something in the at bat. And the next time you have a double. And that's kind of what hitting is. And so it's not every day that you just go out there and you have 4 solid barrels against the same person. Bam, 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 bam. It's got to be a lot of times, a little bit more of a development and an adjustment period. So
yeah, so cool. I think all sports come down to like every moment in every sport comes down to like a binary of yes or no. It's like he does this, I do this. As a reaction. Like Michael Jordan's a great example. He goes up for a right-handed layup. The guy that was in the paint, he sold out for it and went up to block. He reverses and does the right. It's like you just make the opposite reaction based off of what your opponent's doing. And that's what adjustments are. That's all adjustments are. And hitting's the exact same way. If he beats you with a changeup or she beats you with a changeup, you move up in the box the next at bat and you think opposite way, right? Like you make the adjustment. It's just like a yes or no. It's a 1-0 like binary. Essentially, all sports come down to that. I was just talking to one of my friends about that the other day. It's really cool because then you can simplify it. You can make adjustments that way. So, guys, make sure you subscribe if you're watching this. If you like this content, we'll try to bring you guys more. If you have any suggestions or stuff that you want to hear us talk about, you can DM us on Instagram at the School Baseball and Softball Academy. You can also comment on this if you'd like, if you have any suggestions or things that you really want to hear us talk about. There's a ton of experience and knowledge with my dad here. And so there's a lot of good questions that we can ask him. And I think we're only scratching the surface with what we've been talking about. So thank you guys. We'll see you next time.